The Houston Texans just shocked the NFL world with a convincing victory at home over the Chargers. There's a lot to unpack with this game, and it just ended, so we're going to be reacting to it in this video, but I don't even know where to start, man. This was absolutely insane. This was a story of the first quarter versus the rest of the game. In the first quarter, it went just about as I predicted it, with the Chargers coming out with control of the game, getting the rushing attack going downfield, and putting points on the board, forcing turnovers, and they started the game off 6-0. But at the time, I didn't realize that them not scoring touchdowns on those first two drives would come back to bite them tremendously. Because somehow, someway, after the first quarter ended, the Texans completely flipped a switch and all the way into the fourth quarter, scored 26 unanswered points. When it looked like the Chargers were going to be the team that took advantage of the Texans' mistakes and miscues, that turned completely upside down. It was the Chargers that were making big mistakes. Of course, Herbert with those interceptions. We'll talk more about that later. But the Texans were just taking advantage of the Chargers' mistakes, went down the field, scored touchdowns, and just were able to move the ball way more consistently after the first quarter. In a game where I predicted the Chargers to have control and run the ball very effectively, they barely even hit the 50-yard mark rushing the ball, whereas the Texans went north of 160 total rushing yards. This was absolutely shocking to me and a lot of people. For those of you that predicted the Texans to win, I don't think you expected it to be this convincing and for them to more than triple the Chargers' rushing numbers. But even passing the ball, CJ Stroud looked like a completely different quarterback in this game than he did throughout the entire regular season. In a regular season, that was a slump for him. A regular season that I was critiquing in my last video about the Texans because of how poor it was for Stroud. After that first quarter ended, he came out a completely different player. He was making plays, and the game was really on his shoulders. Now, I did just mention that the Texans' rushing attack was great, but that was more towards the end of the game, end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, when they needed to control their lead. But that second quarter from Stroud was one of the best quarters I've seen him play in his whole career, his first 2 years in the NFL. This proves to me that CJ Stroud turns it up a notch in the playoffs, and he's capable of doing that in just about any situation. He put the cape on in this game. You can put as much of this win on the brilliant coaching from DeMeco Ryans and the rest of that coaching staff, or the great rushing attack from Joe Mixon towards the end of the game going north of 100 yards, or Nico Collins' great game from a receiving standpoint. But at the end of the day, it all starts with the quarterback, and especially in a game like this where they asked so much out of CJ Stroud, the broadcast was mentioning it over and over again, that this game would be on the shoulders of Stroud. And based on the whole season, I didn't think that would be a good thing for the Texans this game, but he proved me and a lot of people wrong, and I stand corrected about Stroud. Now, did he make mistakes? Yes, there was still the interception early in the game, and a team better than the Chargers would probably take advantage of that in a much bigger way. Almost threw 2 interceptions this game, but outside of that, nearly perfect from Stroud. I thought he played a great game, so we'll see if they're able to keep this up moving forward. But just an overall impressive game from the Texans offensively. Defensively, Will Anderson Jr. was huge, getting to the quarterback consistently. Danielle Hunter was great. Danico Autry had a huge sack. The pass rush was amazing. But, man, that secondary for the Texans is incredible. Derek Stingley Jr., obviously one of the best corners in the league. We already knew that. But the rest of that secondary came up huge as well. I briefly want to talk about Justin Herbert because I know the hate for this guy in the offseason is going to be crazy. More interceptions in this game than the entire regular season. People are going to be calling this guy a choker. People are going to say this and that. I'm probably going to be defending this guy a lot in the offseason, but there's still a few criticisms to be made because I think the pocket awareness for Herbert needs to improve. He was getting hit on multiple throws. He potentially could have had even more interceptions if some of those throws where he was getting hit didn't fall incomplete, fortunately for them. But at the same time, some of that does have to do with the offensive line. Outside of the 2 tackles, I think the Chargers have probably the worst interior offensive line in the NFL. Pair that with one of the worst receiving cores in terms of playoff teams especially. I just don't think you can put too much of this on Herbert. But at the same time, 2 of those interceptions were definitely his fault. The overthrow of Ladd McConkey and the crossbody throw where, yeah, he gave his receiver a chance, but that just did not need to happen. That throw did not have to be made, especially in the situation they were in. You could point to him and say he's the reason they lost. So I think that's still a valid criticism. He needs to show up in the playoffs, but just an impressive victory for the Texans, something I absolutely did not expect. A complete opposite showing in this game than the 17-game sample size in the regular season, which I absolutely did not expect. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this win. And let me know in the comments if you think CJ Stroud is an elite quarterback in the league and if this game reestablished him as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. That's what I want to know in the comment section. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll be coming out with more content like this for the rest of the playoffs. I hope you all enjoyed. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy. And I'll see you all in the next one.